Welcome to Patrick's Scale Studio. My name's Patrick, and this is Gary, and we'll be your hosts. Gary is my family's second dog. He's an 8-pound Chihuahua, and I figured he also deserved his couple seconds of fame. With him safely out of the way, though, we can move on. And with that, I would like to say cheers. Why, you might ask? This is done. This model is done. It's taken me roughly 4 years from start to finish in varying states of collecting dust and then actively working on it for it to become complete. And now that it is, I couldn't be happier. I can move on to projects that I'm actually not going to put down for such a long time any longer. That one was just so rough, and it's mainly because the Revell kit has had a lot of issues. And Revell should have known better when they engineered this kit. However, they were being typical Revell. That said, still hands down better than Italery's old 148 SR-71 kit. But again, this one definitely has its issues. So we will discuss that after we get through some of the construction and painting here. Well, last video we had complete construction, and the canopies were actually even put in place with a little bit of masking solution right there, right around them, just to kind of hold them in place temporarily. What we can see right now, first I think it's important to note the corrugated areas have got a very dense, flat black coat. And what I'm doing right now is using my airbrush to put on a little bit of modeling in semi-gloss black, and I'm trying to hit all the panel lines. Due to some of the sanding, and I mean major sanding and surgery to eliminate a lot of the seam lines, a lot of the gaps, and overall general poor construction, and I don't think due to my own fault, but I think due to the kit's engineering, a lot of panels needed some rescribing, and needless to say, I just skipped right on over them. One, being a generally black aircraft, I figured that one, they wouldn't really pop out so much if I did not rescribe them, and then two, I think a lot of it personally, and I'll own this, was just a rush to get through this, get it done. Put this in the cabinet and say that now I've got a 148 SR-71. So definitely not my best work as far as construction goes, but then again, I feel like Revell owns quite a bit of that in just like getting the engine nacelles completely put together, a lot of sanding there to eliminate those seam lines, getting those engine nacelles glued to the fuselage. A lot of filling and a lot of sanding. They did not go together properly. There was just gigantic gaps. And even still to this day, some of those gaps reappeared. Some of the Mr. Surfacer shrank back. I put a little bit more Mr. Surfacer on there to fill those and sanded that back. And still again, there are some rough areas. Once again, though, having an all black paint job really helped save the day. But with the semi-gloss black, my thought there was, in contrast to completely flat black, was there would be just a touch of a sheen from the semi-gloss showing through when I put my final top coat on there, which would be really heavily diluted NATO black. And so heavily diluted that it took multiple applications in order to get the finish up to what I was happy and satisfied with. But here we can see it took about an hour just to do the top side, and you may have caught a glimpse of the bottom of the fuselage and the bottom of the airframe. Yep, I had already completed that prior to doing this work, just because it was on the bottom, and I wanted to see how everything worked out before I attacked the top side with that. Next step on this was, now that the semi-gloss black had gone down on all of the panel lines, a little bit of modeling, I took a very heavily darkened dark brown and thinned it and kind of modeled it into the engine nacelles right there. In my mind, this the sheen of black here in these really hot portions of the airplane. We're going to change the color over to a little bit of a more like a warm black, I guess, if there is such a thing. And that's kind of what I wanted to do here, was add this color right there to create that sense of a warmer black. So this is a heavily darkened and thinned dark brown paint that I'm just kind of modeling in there to go underneath the final coat. My next step here, in order to kind of help break up one solid black NATO black coat, was to put in a little bit of navy blue as an undercoat to where that NATO black was going to be, and just kind of to act a little bit in contrast to the engine nacelles and give a little bit of a cooler flavor to the NATO black when it goes down. It's important when you put those final coats on of the NATO black that you do so in such a heavily thinned and controlled manner, so that you let a little bit of this, and I mean just barely any of it, maybe 2%, shine through. The effect is really, really subtle, but in the end, if you're in person, you can tell. Not so much on a YouTube video or on camera, but definitely in person, it's present there. So as you can see, I'm just kind of filling in some of the panels, a little bit of modeling with this navy blue. Just about complete. And I even actually mix a little bit of that up onto the engine nacelles with the warmer dark brown on there. So like I said, after this though, it's going to be heavily thinned NATO black. Speaking of heavily thinned NATO black, you can see I was doing the forward landing gear bay doors first, so I could attach those after everything was said and done with the paint. And here we go, applying the NATO black. What you'll notice on there already is the rudders and the two cones in front of the engines. Those have already been completed, and I wanted to do those separately. One, just to get an idea of what the effect would look like, and then two, just to have something small that was easily redone should the effect not come out like I like. So it happened, it did come out the way I wanted it to, so I went ahead and cemented them in place, and then I was able to go ahead, as I was painting this fuselage and this airframe, and make sure that everything that I was doing kind of matched up. Now you're going to see a lot of different shade of light hitting this. As I was painting, I made sure that I was moving my light source constantly, just to kind of ensure that I was getting the proper glare and sheen on the paint that I wanted, and make sure that I was getting everything covered that I needed to have covered. So again, sorry, the video quality is not the greatest. My hand gets in the way quite a bit, but then again, it's sped up, right? So it's not terrible. But yeah, the source of light there changes consistently, about as consistently as I move the airframe around in order to make sure I'm able to hit everything that I'm looking to cover here with this really thin final coat. And you see that some areas I even go over several times. Just in order to make sure that it is getting the proper build up, and I'm not letting too much of that color show through. One thing that looks out of realism for me is too heavily weathered or too blotchy. When I looked at all the reference pictures online and in a couple of the resource books I've had, this is mainly black, and I mean, it's like that NATO black, kind of that off black, not really super dark black or anything like that. But for the most part, I didn't see a whole lot of very stark color variations in there. So that's kind of why I took the approach that I took when I was doing this. And in the end here, I didn't even actually weather the final paint, just because I really didn't care for the way it looked, and again, operational SR-71s didn't appear to be very heavily weathered. I think they were pretty well taken care of. So after this is finished here, we'll move on to some pictures here and kind of discuss different aspects. Alright, the first photo here, the bottom side with the white cross painted on it so they could recognize it mid-flight while it was breaking speed records. That is tail number 17958. I am thrilled with the paint job up to this point. And with the decals, for a black airplane, I felt like it was an unusually large amount of decals. Luckily, they were all kind of a flat sheen decal made by Cartograph. But I will say I don't believe it was Cartograph's best effort. More decals here, and this right here appears to be post-clear satin coat. I used a satin coat by Mission Models and was less than happy with the results here. This is only on the bottom side. Dried rock hard, and there wasn't much I could do afterwards, so that kind of is what it is. But again, testing out on the bottom side happened to be the better thing to do here in this case, just because no one's going to take it out of my case and flip it over. I won't let them. It's locked. But yeah, a lot of little decals here. Placement wasn't always perfect, but it was difficult to see on such a dark coat. So we move on to the top side, and again, this is before decals, before clear coat. And I absolutely just thrilled with how the paint job turned out. It looks amazing. I got everything I wanted out of the bottom coats and the pre-shading. I move on to the decals here, and this is with a clear coat. And this time I used Tamiya's semi-gloss, and it went down a lot better. It doesn't have that pebbly finish to it, and it has a nice sheen. Now, you might notice I did not put the little silver end on the cones to the engines, and that's just because all my reference pictures for this particular airframe did not show that particular little silver feature there. There's the overall. A lot of people argue that the red is very bright, but again, reference pictures seem to align with the fact that they stood out pretty well. And, you know, that's fine with me. It is what it is, and I think it looks good. And again, this is some of that pre-shading just showing through that clear coat. It looks nice. I'm, again, really pleased with how the top side of this turned out. You still kind of make out the decals a little, but that's okay. From 3 feet away, it's not bad. Canopies were less than great, but they look nice, again, from 3 feet away. So that's a wrap here for this video, and for the pictures and everything I've got to present for this. So, would I recommend this kit to a beginner? Absolutely not. For that matter, I would be hard-pressed to recommend it to a veteran modeler. It was a real pain to get together. As we go through the instructions here, we'll discuss why real quick. I don't want to make this video too long, because frankly, I'm just happy to have this off of my shelf of doom and out of my the unfinished model out of my sight. Landing gear, less than optimal, having to go in before everything's put together, not great. That, and not to mention, these parts here were just barren of detail, not great. Even the nose gear bay, a little bit plain on detail. At least you get to put in the nose gear strut after everything's painted, but it doesn't make much sense if you're already putting in the main gears at the same time. Otherwise, it's just always going to sit on its chin. So moving on, the cockpit, very devoid of detail. I did put in the Quinta Studio set. It is hard to make out without a light, but with a light it looks great. That really makes this cockpit area shine. There's a lot more going on these back walls, and again, completely devoid of detail. The refueling probe, or the refueling point for the aircraft, I just wish they would bring up little factoids like this here in the instructions, but when the aircraft's parked and there's no hydraulic pressure, this is down. It's not up. The engines, this was a nice assembly. The interior of the engine, you don't see very much of it though. I'd be hard pressed to see any of it myself at all, even with a light. So once you paint it up nice, it looks great, but you don't see anything. Moving on through here. Yeah, this right here, putting these together, that seam line was awful. that seam line right there was terrible. Seam line down here, luckily that looks like that was where that kind of presses into the fuselage, most of that is, but it's still, that was terrible. Absolutely terrible to deal with. A lot of sanding. I just didn't have the, I didn't have the patience any longer to rescribe the missing panel lines. And then this right here, the true nightmare of this build is getting these to mate on there without a seam or out a gap or anything at all. I've seen a few other builds of this on YouTube, and for the most part, maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. They all look to deal with it okay, but it just was it was an absolute nightmare for me. Most of these surfaces went in place okay, no trouble there. I did rescribe a little bit of the panel lines on this right here when I had to sand them in and blend them into these lower pieces, but they're pretty flat, so it was pretty easy to do, and figured why not. Everything right there could use a much sharper leading and trailing edge though. Nothing too out of sorts here. Again, the landing gear and the bays are just a little bit plain. I added a little bit of additional like brake lines here to the main landing gear, give a little bit of interest. Something you may have noticed in the very last picture in this was there was a little bit of fogging on there. It was just a one big last middle finger to me from the kit. There was a little bit of hazing, and I'm not sure where that came from, but it was at the very bottom of this windscreen right there. From 3 feet away, it looks okay, but still, it's up close, I know it's there, and it was very aggravating. The engines I didn't even bother with. I didn't want to use Revell's stupid stand, because the way they'd have you do this on the stand is with the canopies open and looking like it's in flight, yet the landing gear's all extended, and then these engines are sitting below it. It didn't speak to me. Yeah, there's the stand I speak of. And that's what they would have you build. A lot of decals. A very, very, very large amount of decals for what you would think was just a overall black scheme. And you know, you get some of the red lines and a couple of the national insignias, yada yada yada. These right here, I think I mentioned earlier, not my favorite cartograph decals. They went on okay, but they still kind of showed through multiple coats of clear coat. It's aggravating. There was no silvering or anything like that, but you can just still kind of tell the decal films there. That is it for this kit, and I am so happy to see it done and over with. So I hope you enjoyed my video. Coming up next should be more work on the USS Fletcher, and then I'm going to also start work on some 1/350th Navy U.S. Navy projects. So I hope you'll stick around with the channel. If you have any feedback, please feel free to leave that for me in the comments section below. And until next time, stay safe and happy modeling.